So, welcome everyone. What I was thinking today would be fun is maybe we just work on trend today. I was thinking this would be a good day to work on trend and just kind of practice looking at trend from a general perspective because it is something that people have a hard time with. So, the next like 20 minutes or so are going to be dedicated towards trend. I will be on our TikTok channel afterwards doing regular chart analysis, things of that nature. But for right now, I just wanted to work on trend for the next like 20 minutes or so because I think it's something that people can use more practice with. So when we talk about trend, trend is actually a very clear definition. I know people will have different interpretations of trend and what it means. What's up, San? How you doing? Um, but realistically, it's not really up for grabs, right? You can have opinions on what you think the market may be doing and may not be doing, but the actual definition of trend is a clear definition. What you're looking for is three directional segments in which you are either establishing higher highs and higher lows for an uptrend, right? So if we're doing an uptrend here, we're looking at something that's going and doing higher highs, higher highs. No, not clicking. There we go. Thought I had selected it. Click, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, and so on and so forth, right? That would be the definition of an uptrend, whereas a downtrend would be establishing lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. Oops, see Daisy, clicked the wrong one. Sorry about that. There we go. Lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, right? And that would be our downtrend. So uptrend, downtrend. If you do not have clear directional movement, what's up, EV? If you do not have clear directional movement, then you are in a consolidating or sideways moving market. So uptrend, downtrend. So when we're looking at a chart, regardless of whatever time frame you're looking at, one of the first things you need to do is see where you can see a clear directional movement so that you can start from there. Like you can start from the most recent movement, but you have to go see if you've broken past corrections and control points, which I will explain in a moment. But I think everyone, if you look at this chart right here on euro dollar, I'm here on the monthlies, and I'm just trying to evaluate the trend on the monthlies. It doesn't matter what time frame we're doing this on, it's going to be the same procedure regardless of time frame, right? So here on the monthlies, do I have any clear trends that I can point to, and then from that point forward say, okay, this was the trend, what has happened since that point? Well, I think everyone can clearly see that we had a pretty significant downtrend here that broke easily past any sort of control points on this previous uptrend, right? Can everyone see that easily? Green's live made you sad? Why is that, BBB? So we have lower lows, and then you have this little correction, right? Lower highs, and then you have a lower low, and then you have a lower high, and then you have a lower low, and then you have a lower high, and then you have a lower low. Can everyone see that directional movement in terms of what's happening there? And I'll mark it off, so like every time we're going establishing, we're going lower low, right? I'll mark all the lows first because it'll make it easier to have directional movement first. Lower low, and then lower low. I know I'm doing this slow, guys, but I'm doing it on purpose for people to really understand the intricacies of this. And lower low. And then we have the correction. So we have the impulsive moves. The impulsive moves are the moves in the direction of the trend. And then you have the corrective phase, which pulls back from those impulsive moves, right? Here you have another one, little impulse correction right there. Another one right here, little impulse correction. And there we go. Now, if you drop to a line view here, you can see it a little bit more easily, right? You can see what I didn't quite put that on the right point. There we go. You can see the lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. And we can see how this is matching our downtrend trajectory. Oh, yeah, I don't care about politics, man. I only care about how it affects the market. So lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. And that was a downtrend. Now, as you establish new lows or as you establish new highs in an uptrend, so as you establish new lows in a downtrend or as you establish new highs in an uptrend, you are changing your control points. So control points are always established with every segment. Every new segment that's established, when we establish a new low or when we establish a new high in an uptrend, will establish a new control point. So what does that mean? As I am moving down in this downtrend, my control points are constantly being adjusted. So we started with this initial segment of movement here. We had an uptrend and then we started to reverse direction. But let me ask you this question. Up until this point, guys, if this was the end of what had happened, if that was as far as we were we in a downtrend yet at that point? Was that reversal enough for a downtrend? It was not, right? Why wasn't that a downtrend yet? Because for me to establish a downtrend, I need to have at least 3 directional movements. Does that make sense? One impulsive move is not enough to establish a trend reversal. The other reason is I had not broken past the previous control point of the previous trend. So let's get back to control points and talk about it. So how do control points work? So I'm establishing this segment. So far, I'm still in just the uptrend. I'm in the corrective phase from the uptrend. Then I have a pullback to a lower high, not a higher high, which is what we would want in an uptrend, but a lower high. And still at this point, I was still in an uptrend because for all we knew, it was going to go and establish a new high, right? But then we had this big directional move that moved past the control point, the controlling high or low of that uptrend. The moment this move happened and we candle closed past this point, our uptrend ended, because you cannot have an uptrend with a lower low. The definition of an uptrend is higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, right? So the moment I candle closed here past this directional movement, it's the exact same on all time frames. That's why I'm just doing the analysis with you guys. Doesn't matter what time frame you're doing it on, trend is always evaluated the same. Now the trend won't be the same on different time frames, right? I can have a different trend on a 4-hour time frame than I have on a weekly time frame, but the way to evaluate the trend will always be the same. It's always going to be the exact same regardless of the time frame. That's why we'll use always our intermediate time frame for our trend analysis, right? When we're doing our chart analysis, we always do a minimum of 3 time frames, and we always use the intermediate time frame to evaluate trend, even though we're going to score it based on what the lower time frame is doing. So, lower low, lower high, lower low. Once I've established 3 directional segments like that, 1, 2, 3, right? An impulse, a correction, and an impulse that are directional. I have a lower low, a lower high, and a lower low, and I've ended the previous trend by breaking past the control point. We're going to talk about gaps in a little bit, BBB. One thing at a time, my man. All right. Once I have the 3 directional segments and I've broken past control, that is when I have a trend reversal. So for me to establish a trend reversal, I have to establish these 2 parameters. 1, I have to establish 3 directional segments. Why is it not typing? Oh. A higher high, higher low, higher high for uptrend, or lower low. I wish this didn't go off screen. Hold on a second. Lower high, lower low for down trend. There we go. And I have to break past the control of the previous trend if there was one. If the trend was non-directional, then I don't have to break past the control of the previous trend, right? So if I was neutral in trend, then this second part doesn't matter. But if I had a previous trend, I have to end the previous trend, and I have to have 3 directional segments, right? So those are the 2 points right there to have a trend reversal. That's the definition of what a trend reversal is. So 1, 2, 3, I broke past the controlling high or low of the previous uptrend, thereby ending the uptrend and establishing a new downtrend. Now, every time I'm in a trend, when I establish a new low in a downtrend or a new high in an uptrend, I'm moving my control points. So previously, my control points were up here on the first segment. Not there. Let me grab this horizontal segment. I had a controlling higher high. Maybe. I was grabbing it. It's a little delayed when I use this OBS software, I'm seeing. Oh, Jesus. So it like drew it after I clicked it. That's not great. Can we do it together, OBS? Come on, OBS. You can let me do it, man. Don't delay me. Oh, Jesus. This is painful. See, I like this in certain circumstances, but I don't like this aspect of it. It's kind of annoying that it like slows it down like this, you know? It's not even letting me grab to the top of this thing. Let's just do this. I'll take off anchors. There we go. I'm going to make that yellow for us to see where the control points are. So that's going to be our yellow controlling higher high. I'm going to take away this blue line that I just drew for no reason. I'm going to try and take away this blue line that I just drew for no reason. There we go. And then we have our controlling lower low. So it's on the segment, right? When I'm within these two control points, nothing is happening. Yes, you always have to look at the previous trend. Exactly right. Exactly right, Tim. You always have to see. That's why I was saying one of the first things you should do when you're looking at trend is see where you have a clear trend, right? And sometimes that might mean you have to go further back because you want to make sure you're not in the corrective phase of a trend, because you could have a corrective phase, right? And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. That could last for a long time in a moment. So here, this is my segment, then I have a retracement. So I have a new low, and then I have a lower high. And then I broke past this control point. I broke past my controlling lower low. The moment I candle closed, not just wicked, the moment I candle closed past my controlling lower low, my controlling lower high instantly changed to whatever the highest point was in between the two previous control points. So the moment I candle closed past this control, this became my new controlling lower high. And then the moment I pulled back, I corrected from my impulse, that became my controlling lower low. And now my control points have shifted. Now this is my controlling lower high, and this is my controlling lower low. And as long as I was within these two control points, I'm still in a downtrend. Doesn't matter what it does in here. It doesn't matter if we have a little high, 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 low, high, 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 low, because everything that happens in between the control points would be considered correction. Does that make sense to everyone? So I have my impulse, and then anything that happens in here is just correction. So it wouldn't change anything, regardless of what happens in here. Now the moment I candle close past this control point, this controlling lower low, what happens again? As soon as I candle close past my controlling lower low, this becomes my new controlling lower high. Whatever the highest point was in between the previous control points becomes my new controlling lower high. And then when I correct back from the impulse and correction, right, for my new controlling lower low, that becomes my new controlling lower low. And this is constantly shifting. We're shifting down every time we establish a new low and a downtrend, or every time we establish a new high and an uptrend. So it's just shifting the control points. Now these are my control points. And anything that happens in between these yellow lines doesn't matter. It's still a downtrend. And then when I break past my low, now once again, I've established a new controlling lower high. Whatever the highest point was becomes my controlling lower high. And then when I correct back from my new low, that becomes my new controlling lower low. And these were the final control points for this previous downtrend. Is everybody with me so far? So the control points are constantly shifting as we are establishing either new lows in a downtrend or as we are establishing new highs in an uptrend. So far so good? Cool. Anybody have any questions thus far? This is very important stuff, so I want to make sure people understand, and I'm trying to explain it very slowly so everyone hopefully understands what I'm doing. All right, let's go back to candle view, because even though it's nice to see line view, it was just to show you guys, you can see the impulse and correction here. So I'm going to take away these. We don't need these anymore. I was just showing you the directional moves. I'm going to take all these away. Bye, and so on and so forth. All right. So we had this clear downtrend. We're going back to candle view. Then we reversed. And what did we do? We reversed impulsively. We had an impulse, but that impulse broke past the controlling lower high. Does that make sense? This was the controlling lower high. This was the controlling lower low. I candle closed past the controlling lower high. And you'll notice I'm saying candle closed. It's not enough to wick past. It has to candle close past it. I need the body of the candle to close past. Why is that important? Why do I have to candle close past the control? I can't just wick past it. Because financial institutions will purposefully cause false breakouts, right? Who has ever seen a market where perhaps it's in consolidation, maybe it's in a wedge or a pennant or something like that, and you think it's breaking out directionally, but then it reverses and comes back in? Who's ever seen that happen on the charts? Where you think it's breaking out of that trend or out of that consolidation, but it's actually not. It reverses back out like a fake breakout. It happens all the time, right? All the time, all the time, all the time. So we want to be careful and make sure that we have an actual candle close past levels. What's another reason we don't want to take the wicks into consideration for trend? I know there are people that consider wicks for trend, guys. There is a very specific reason that I don't, and that in my experience, most traders don't. And the reason for that is also, you can also have liquidity traps, right? Banks will purposely push price through levels where retail traders are trading just to knock them out and fish for the liquidity. So we want to be wary of just wick movements. We want to see the candle close, defining that we actually have broken past and changed that directional movement, right? So the moment this green candle right here, this green candle closed above this yellow line, yeah, exactly. The moment we candle close above this yellow line, that was the end of this downtrend, because you cannot have a downtrend with a higher high. That breaks the definition of what a downtrend is. So what do we do from that point? Well, we say, okay, well, where was the last control point of this downtrend? The last control point of this downtrend was this controlling lower low, right? So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, from the last control point of the previous trend, we are now going to determine what has been happening since then, because it's like a fresh start. Now I'm fresh, I'm brand new. I've candle closed past the controlling lower high, so my downtrend is dead. So now what has happened since it ended? Where did it officially end? It ended at its last control point. Since that has happened, what have I done in terms of market movement? Well, I've established a higher high, I've established a higher low, I've established a higher high, I've established a higher low, and then, didn't get to the new higher high. So I started establishing an uptrend. Higher high, higher low, higher high, right? So I had 1, 2, 3 directional movements. And if I have 3 directional segments that broke past the control of the previous trend, that was the control point, then I've established an uptrend. So this was an uptrend up to this point. Everybody with me so far? That was an uptrend. We had established a higher high, a higher low, and a higher high. And we had an uptrend right here on euro dollar. Then we had a new higher low, but then we didn't quite break past the controlling higher high. So where were our control points at this point? Our control points at this point on this uptrend were controlling higher high right here and controlling higher low down here. Those were our control points. This one is gone. We've ended that downtrend and we've established now a higher high, a higher low, and a higher high. We have an uptrend now. And as long as I remained within these yellow lines, anything that happened in here wouldn't matter. Anything that happened within those yellow lines would not matter. But what did I do in this case? Well, in this case, I eventually ended up, well, did I break past? Let me just see what the low here is. What's the open here? Open here is 109.29. By the way, pardon me, 105.72. If you guys aren't seeing where the open is, it's up here. You see this area right here? Open, high, low, close. Open, high, low, close, right? So I'm hovering over the candle to see what the open is, and you can see the open there is 105.723, right? And what I want to see is if this technically broke past that open. And you can see it did. It did it did 105.66. So I was 6 pips below. So I did technically break past this control point here. Now there are many people, many traders that would say that's not a very significant break. 6 pips is 6/100ths of a penny. It is not a significant break of structure, right? And that's a very understandable position to be in. I personally always defer towards being more conservative in my scoring. So for me, I look at it from the perspective of, I would rather consider it a break and lower my scoring for a zone if I'm evaluating taking a trade than score it higher because I feel like it's still in an uptrend. Does that make sense to everyone? Technically, it broke past the control, and even though it's a very slight break, I would still consider it a break of the trend in terms of scoring because I would rather be more conservative than be more, just going with my instincts. I'd rather go with that. Even if I still felt it was in an uptrend, I'd still rather lower the score of my zone and still see if it's a viable score, even with that lowered score. And for people who are watching this video later on and aren't Phantom members, and you're hearing me say the score and that's confusing to you, that we have a 20-point scoring system to evaluate trades. That's what I'm referring to when I talk about that. So if that's confusing to you, I understand. But right now I'm just talking about for people that are members, I would rather defer towards that lower score. For those of you who aren't members, even though this is a very slight break of the trend, it did technically establish a lower low, and I would consider it a break of trend. So when I established this lower low, what did I just do? Well, I ended the uptrend because you cannot have an uptrend with a lower low. That breaks the definition of what an uptrend is. So then the same way we've said here, okay, when this ended, where was my last control point? I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to say, okay, well, if I broke past that, my uptrend is dead. Where did my uptrend officially end? My uptrend officially ended at its last control point, which was this controlling higher high. And I'm going to go and move this blue line over here to the controlling higher high, and I'm going to say, what has happened since I did that? Well, I've established an impulse, a correction, and an impulse. And in that impulse, correction, impulse, I did a lower low, a lower high, and a lower low. So what did I establish there? I established a little mini downtrend. Can everyone see how we established a little mini downtrend? A lower low, a lower high, and a lower low. If this candle had not closed below this control point, this would have still been simply the correction for this uptrend. But because I did candle close it, I would consider that a little mini downtrend there. So now we have a little mini downtrend. And where is our controlling lower high? Our controlling lower high is right here. And where's our controlling lower low? Our controlling lower low is down here. And now I have this downtrend. And then what did I do? I established a higher high. Downtrend, instantly dead. I got my 3 directional segments. I broke past control, but it was a short-lived downtrend. The moment I candle closed above the controlling lower high, no more downtrend. My downtrend has ended because you cannot have a downtrend with a higher high. So where did the downtrend end? At its last control point, right there. This is gone. No more controlling lower high there. That's done. And now we do the same thing. We're going to say, okay, what has happened since this downtrend ended right here? And I've established a higher high. I've established a higher low. I've established a higher high. And I've established a higher low. So it is currently on the monthly level, the euro dollar is currently on an uptrend. Can everyone see that directional movement? I establish an impulse. I have a correction to a new higher low. I have a new higher high, and then I have a new higher low. Everybody with me so far? Good, good, good. And where would our control points be at this point on this trend? Our control points on this uptrend right now would be right here. That's the controlling higher high. And then right here is the controlling higher low. Those are my current control points on this uptrend. And that is where we currently are on euro dollar. We are in an uptrend on the monthly time frame. We are in the we're just correcting from our most recent higher high, and if this goes and establishes a new high, if the next move out of this, for example, is something like, oh, is that the one I want? That is the one I want. Okay. If the next move out of this is to establish a new high from here, like that, then the moment this candle closes above our current controlling higher high, this will become the new controlling higher low. Now maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll break in reverse, right? But that's our current state of affairs. We are currently in a higher high, a higher low, a higher high, and thus far a higher low. Cool, cool, cool? So that is how you define trend, guys. You just go through each little segment and see if you broke. Now what BBB was talking about before were gaps. And there are different philosophies on gaps. I personally, again, I defer towards being more conservative. So if you have a gap correction, which we don't have here because we're looking at Forex, so let's go look at a different asset. Let's go look at, I don't know, let's go look at Apple or something. There we go, Apple. When you have gap corrections, gaps are simply movements that are occurring outside of market hours, right? And they represent impulsive moves because for you to cause a gap correction, it is a significant imbalance in order flow. Something big is happening outside of market hours to drive price action that significantly. Regardless of the size of the gap, there are some very rare exceptions to this, but in general, gaps are pretty significant moves. So I'm going to clear the charts here, remove drawings, and they should always be considered impulsive moves, right? Remember, we're using those terms for trend, impulse, and correction, right? They should always be considered impulsive moves. So if I have a gap, I will always consider it a viable thing. And I'll give you an example of what I mean here. Can you guys see how this candle closed down and then we had a gap up, right? Because the close of this candle was here, but then the open of the next week's candle was right there. Can everyone see that gap? That gap is a correction from the impulse to me. The way I consider trend, I would consider that a correction. So I would consider that a control point. So I have a new low, and then I have a new lower high, and then I have a new lower low because there's a gap there, and then a new lower high, and then a new lower low. So that would count towards my control as I'm establishing this downtrend. Does that make sense to everyone? Like, I won't ignore gaps because gaps are imbalances in liquidity that are occurring outside of market hours. And this is one of the downsides. Like, it's nice to look at line views to see peaks and valleys, but gaps don't show up on line views a lot of the time, right? Depending on where they are. So you have to double check on your actual candle view to make sure that you don't have any gap corrections. Cool. So this, we had a lower low, and then that gap correction, lower high, and then a lower low because it comes all the way down. It opens down here, right? And then a lower high, and then a lower low, and then we ended up establishing a higher high, breaking that little mini downtrend that we had established there. But we did establish a little mini downtrend over these 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. 4 weeks of downtrend, and then we broke it. Then we did a higher high, and then we did a higher low, and then we did a higher high, and then we did a higher low, and then we did a higher high, and then we broke that. Right? We broke past that control point, and then we did a lower low, gap correction, lower high, lower low, lower high. Right? So what's the trend right now on this weekly chart for Apple, guys? You guys tell me in the chat. What is the current trend for Apple right now on this weekly chart? Is this an uptrend, a downtrend, or a sideways moving trend? Taking into consideration all that information we just looked at. Currently an uptrend, a downtrend, or a sideways moving trend? What do you guys think? Can you guys hear me all right? Or is it just a delay on YouTube? So it's currently a down, and that's why I was choosing this one very specifically, was to show you what I mean about the gap correction. So let's think about this in terms of what we have. I have a higher high, which we broke past the control point here, right? A higher high. Then I have a higher low. Then I have a higher high. Then I have a higher low. Then I have a higher high. Up until that point, it wasn't an uptrend. This was my controlling higher low. And this was my controlling higher high. So far, so good. Then I had an impulse, a lower low, gap correction, lower high, impulse, lower low that broke past the controlling higher low of the previous uptrend. The moment this candle closed below that body, no more uptrend, because I can't have an uptrend with a lower low. Is everybody with me on that? Does that make sense to everyone? So if we draw this in terms of segments, if we look at it from a segment perspective, I'm just gonna kind of squish it up a little bit better so we can see a little bit better. I'm gonna do the correction first because it's already green right now. I have this to this. I'll mark that red for down. And then I have this all the way down to the open here. Right, and we've had a little correction right here as well. So a lower low, a lower high, and a lower low. And if we drop to a line view, you'll be able to see what I mean there. A lower low, a lower high, and a lower low. Those are the segments I have. Does that make sense? So I broke past the control point of the previous uptrend, which was right here. That was I had a new higher high here. That was when I established a new high, right? I had broken past the previous high. I established a new high here. The moment I established a new high, that became my controlling higher low. And then I corrected from that higher high, and then I established a new high. The moment I established this new high, that became my controlling higher low. And then when I corrected from that high, that became my controlling higher high. And these were my control points on that uptrend. But when this candle, this red candle, closed below the body, because it's the body, right? We're not counting the wicks. Remember the wicks. The moment I candle closed below the body of this base candle here, no more uptrend, because you can't have an uptrend with a lower low. That breaks the definition of what an uptrend is. So the same way we define, well, where did the uptrend officially end? It will have ended at its last control point. The last control point for this uptrend was right here at that controlling higher high. That was the last control point. And since that uptrend has ended, what have we had in terms of directional movement? We've had an impulse, lower low, correction, lower high with that gap, impulse to a lower low, and technically a correction right here so far to a lower high. But we're currently active on that candle. So we're currently in a downtrend. Cool, cool, cool. So that's it for today's YouTube stream, guys. I just wanted to do a little bit on trend because I think it's good to have more trend practice. And I will, I'll relabel the cover for everyone. But there are reasons, as I said, why I don't include the wicks. There are some people that have different philosophies. There are reasons I consider gaps as part of the correction because changes in liquidity matter to me even if they are outside of market hours. So these are things that most traders will take into consideration. Some people have different opinions on them. Some of them like, I don't care about that little gap. It doesn't matter to me. Some people will just look at a directional movement and say that's enough for a trend. But the actual definition of a trend is, again, 3 directional movements, either establishing higher highs and higher lows or lower highs and lower lows. And if there was a previous trend, you have to break past the control of the previous trend. Otherwise, you're simply in the corrective phase from the impulse. So that's the technical definition of a trend. And I try and be very proper in terms of how I use trend because I don't want it to falsely influence my trades, right? I want to make sure I'm taking trades that meet the highest of scores, even if the trend is perhaps a little bit different than what I would like it to be. I want to use whatever that trend actually is, not just what I would like it to be, right? All right, that's it for now. I'm going to take like 10 minutes and then I'll be hopping over to our backup TikTok channel, guys. So I'll be on our backup TikTok. Our backup TikTok is not the main one, not the Trade Phantoms. I'll be on the backup here. You guys like my fall logo? Oh, I have to log in. Well, it's just Trade Phantoms _pro. It's here, actually, type it in. It's easier if I type it in, _pro. This one right here. So I'll be on here in about 10 minutes, logged into our backup TikTok account. And you can go check it out there. All right. All right, guys. Thank you. I'll see some of you over there. Take care, everybody.